Hey everyone, today I want to run through 4 of my favorite ideas and techniques for staying zoned in on my mix. When we're spending long hours in front of the screen writing tracks, we grow a visual relationship with our music. I have an intimate relationship with my track sitting there on the screen in Cubase, and I know my way around it well. These blocks start here, the automation line comes up, and then boom, all these blocks come in and the track's going off. But as much as it begins to feel like we're playing Tetris, let's remember that this arrangement is something a listener will never see, only hear. They don't see the colored Tetris blocks on the screen that we do. They only hear these parts coming and going. They don't see the latest fancy looking graphics on your VSTs and plugins. They only hear the output. Most listeners will never know nor care how you made the music. Their only concern is the sound waves coming out of their speakers, possibly hundreds or thousands of miles away from your studio, months or maybe even years later. They may not even know your name when they hear your music. You're just sound. So cut off that visual connection. Try closing your eyes and just let your ears take over. Just stop looking at it and make sure that you're actually listening to that track, not seeing it on a screen. Or try this. Next time you're listening back to the mix, try just turning off the screen. It's a sort of sensory deprivation. You're cutting off a completely unimportant sight, to enhance the only really important sense needed to write great music, your hearing. And if you really want to take it to the next level, try just turning off all the lights. Try being alone in the dark with your music, just totally immersed in it. In my opinion, what characterizes the seasoned professionals is their ability to listen. With the constant visual interaction in front of us, we can fall into the trap of trying to fix the problems and hurdles we encounter with our eyes instead of our ears, hammering away on autopilot at the track until it just seems to look right on screen. Okay, so you've high-passed your lead at 200 Hz, and the bassline clash looks like it should be sorted out now on the analyzer, but are you actually listening to that EQ cut? Is that clash actually sorted out? What about the reverb dry wet mix? Okay, you're looking at your reverb plugin, 15% wet, shouldn't be too bad, right? But are your ears actually telling you that you've succeeded in keeping it dry enough? One thing I highly recommend is steering away from instinctive use of spectrum analyzers, such as those built into fantastic EQs like the FabFilter Pro Q. I have mine turned off by default, and I'll pull up an analyzer if I really need one. Remember, until the Pro Tools wave started in the 90s, engineers were simply staring at a mixing console and a pair of speakers while the music played off from a tape machine across the room. There wasn't a computer screen to mix and match the music. I'm gonna confess something to you right now. I'm a bit of an internet addict. Jumping on good old interweb usually starts with a plain old healthy research for a music job, and 20 minutes later I'm watching the rig rundown of Steve Lukather from iconic 80s band Toto. And now that Donald Trump is president, a bad dream I still can't wake up from, my newsfeed is so full of hilarious insight into the that there really is no such thing as a quick Facebook check anymore. It's not that I'm lacking in creative motivation, it's just that I'm really easily sidetracked. In fact, a recent study published in the academic journal Computers and Human Behavior showed that when given the opportunity, students trying to study lasted an average of 6 minutes before falling back to distractions like phones and social media. 6 minutes. Now, I'd bet good money that at least half of you have the same problem, and I hope you can join me in acknowledging that it's absolutely slaughtering our productivity. So take action. If you really want to be that incredible, respected producer you tell yourself you'd love to be, approach your craft like a concert violinist. Focus yourself. There are some great distraction blockers out there. I use LeechBlock, a free Firefox add-on that prevents me from visiting my list of websites for a specified amount of time. Then there's Waste No Time for Safari and Chrome, and the Freedom app. I've also started using Sprint Work, which can be set to prevent the opening of your internet browser. And just do a little bit of research and you see there's some great apps for distraction blocking this little guy too. As much as I hate to admit it, I just get more music work done this way. I'm lucky enough to call music production my full-time job. but I think this software becomes even more valuable to those of you fitting music production in between your day job, your relationship, and your family. Okay, so you've got some flow in your track, but you hit that classic roadblock. What should come next? Your track leads beautifully up to a big drop and boom, you can't figure out what sounds, melodies, or leads to drop in. There's just an empty space. You feel like you've written the perfect backing track for a killer hook that you haven't yet created, so you need some inspiration. How about asking yourself this question? If a buddy of yours sent you the ultimate track, they're like, dude, you gotta hear this track. You've never heard it before, you put it on, and it's just ripping out of your speakers, blowing your mind, and it's just the most perfect dream piece of music. What would it actually sound like? Seriously, stop and think. What would that piece of music actually sound like? I mean, for all this time that you're spending on music, you must have had a handful of inspirational dance floor moments. Like, you know, the ones that you try to describe to other people, and it was this amazing party, and it was in this immense location, and you end up getting all excited just describing it again. It gets your heart pumping just going back there. And the people you're describing it to are thinking, wow, that sounds incredible. Well, what if your tracks could be like a musical version of that? Of trying to describe those insane dance floor moments you've had to other people. Like you're telling the story of how amazing those parties were through music itself. Sometimes I just stare at my speaker cones and think, what do I actually want to be coming out of them? Like, what would the perfect music sound like if it was coming out of those speakers right now? And then I just try to make it. You need to access your imagination. That track you're working on now, if that section was playing through a huge sound system and it was leading to that moment and the dust is rising off the dance floor and everyone's hands go up in the air, if it was one of those perfect tracks, boom! What happens in that imaginary version? Now do you hear that sound you're looking for? Of course, your job is to learn your tools so you can actually turn those fantasies into realities. So you can fantasize about incredible dance floor moments, take a mental picture of them, and render it in Ableton Live or Cubase or whatever you use. Lean back into the moments where it all happened in the first place. Those magical experiences which gave you a lifetime of inspiration, and get that blood flowing, that excitement back. Why don't you translate some of that energy into your track and maybe take your listener into that musical fantasy with you? Sometimes you just need to stop writing, stop hacking away at the DAW for just 1 second and go back in here for some inspiration. Let me cut straight to the chase. I'd say my general objectivity, that is, my ability to best judge how something might sound to the listener, usually lasts less than 5 minutes on any given task. If I'm EQing a bass, or tweaking a reverb, or adjusting compression, my ears tune out of real world and into a very subjective place. What's right and wrong, good and bad becomes imbalanced very quickly. Not to the extremes I'd encountered 15 years ago, when I started writing music seriously, but even today, if I was to mix for 3 hours straight, I'd slowly start to make more and more decisions which I'd later go back and correct with fresh ears. From years of teaching and studying behaviors, I've concluded that this is true for most of us. It does depend on the source material. If I had to mix a beautifully recorded, expensively produced song, I'd be able to work for longer because things just tend to fit into place easier. But when set to the tasks of more in-depth problem solving, I actually recommend working in short bursts. So say you're crafting that bass, you open your synth up and get to work. You adjust your envelopes for a couple minutes, make one little filter tweak, and then boom, you just hit that magic spot. It's not done, but you're getting there. Great. Now stop. Stick a little victory flag into the ground, be happy with your progress, and just work on something else for a minute. Maybe finesse that drum fill earlier in the track that's been bothering you, or go grab a glass of water. When you come back to that bass, you'll have that thing we're always looking for when producing music: fresh ears. It's a bit like the way mountain climbers set up camp every night and sleep, instead of just trying to do the whole mountain in one non-stop crazy mission. Okay, so we go do some other stuff and then we come back to that thing we were working on. Now hopefully that part is still sounding just as good as we left it, but I find that often there's a few little harmonics or envelope details I didn't actually hear 5 minutes ago, nuances. But with this fresh in perspective, keep working until you hit your next little victory point, but try to resist the urge to be the hero and smash the whole process out in one non-stop slog. If you can keep hitting minor victories, taking a short break, then returning back to the sound. You'll be building it with constantly fresh ears and a more neutral perspective. In this case, we tend to end up with parts which we're less likely to throw in the rubbish bin the next day. Of course, sometimes you're creating something a little more abstract which requires complete immersion. Things like kick and bass have more of an objective, strong, weak quality, where fresh ears will really benefit. Crafting, say, evolving pads, abstract sounds, that kind of thing, on the other hand, maybe suggests some more immersive writing experiences, less in need of hearing it with fresh ears how it really is. The main point is to stay disciplined. The creative process can be a fiery one, which overtakes your sensibilities and has you staying up until 8 a.m. exploring your own hallways of wild expression. But don't make the mistake of thinking that keeping an eye on that free spirit is necessarily repressive. If you're wondering which qualities the professionals possess which mark them out, it's often that they've been honest enough with themselves to identify the things they do really well and do that thing a lot, as well as identifying their weak points and bad habits, a little bit like that concert violinist, and having the discipline to improve the workflow and productivity. So good luck with that. Keep writing, keep your head in the game, and stay focused. See you guys later. Bye.